catching my breath. How are you? How are you? Hey, beauty. I see you, Dana Nicole. I want to talk a little bit about how you are doing and what you are sensing about what's happening in your world and in your life. Misha, thank you. Yes, this is my mom wig. She slaps her on and she looks like somebody. I was at the orthodontist today looking very, very special. Okay, looking like Mackenzie's sister. Okay, God, if it be your will, let it stay that way. How are you? If I had my feelings wheel, I would make you pick out a feeling on your feelings wheel. I have it. I just can't show it to you. But I'm going to pull up my feelings wheel because I want to check in for a minute and just see how you're doing. Life continues to life. It continues to stretch me beyond what I often feel capable of, but also to a level of faith that I must depend on. I am in a new season of my life, and not just because of what happened last weekend. I was in a new season before that. And I don't know if you're like me. Felicia says, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I got it. I feel you. Am I the only one? And I want you to answer in the comments. I'm going somewhere. I promise. Am I the only one who ends up feeling like, who am I? I had these things that happen in my life. A loss, a gain, a growth opportunity. And I end up wondering to myself, like, who am I now? Like, what does this mean? And sometimes the answer is you're still the same person. And then there are other moments where it's like you have undeniably changed. You have more wisdom. You have more strength. You have more responsibility. And I think sometimes I begin to grieve my present because I am trying to be who I used to be in a moment that no longer has space for my old ways of being. And the fear of letting go of who I used to be makes me believe that if I let go of who I used to be, that I'll get lost in someone else's agenda, that I'll lose the things that make me happy, that I'll lose the things that make me unique to who I am. And I think sometimes in an effort to hold on to ourselves, that we end up missing our growth opportunities, and we end up missing our life, the joy that is in this moment, the lessons that are in this moment, because we're so busy saying, I'm not going to lose. When I first got married, I went through this, like, I'm going to hang on to myself. I've worked so hard to finally get to who I am and where I am. I'm going to hang on to me at all costs. And guess what? It did cost. It costs to hang on to yourself in a season where life is changing. It takes real trust in God to be able to say, you know what? I trust that this present uncertainty is a womb that will birth the next version of who I am. And so letting go of that previous identity, letting go of an identity that we have loved, letting go of an identity that has made us feel safe, even if safety is really restriction, right? I'm not going to open my heart to love. I'm not going to dream. I'm not going to write the book because I'm not opening myself up for criticism or judgment. Those things make us feel safe, but there comes a point in our life where we have to be willing to say, you know what? I'm going to let go of who I am, so that I can become one step closer to who God is calling me to be in this moment. In this moment, you're watching this and you're like, I'm randomly on this live. In this moment, it is possible that God is not asking you to be who you were 5 years ago, a year ago, yesterday. God wants you to be who you are today. And so that then requires us to say, God, who am I? Who am I for this moment? Who am I for this Instagram live? Not who am I so that I can set this in stone and begin to show up in life with confidence. But literally sometimes the identity comes down to little pieces of us coming to ourselves and saying, like, who am I as a mom right now? Who am I as a business owner? Who am I as a team player? Who am I? Who do you need me to be? What can I do in this moment that will allow you to get the most glory out of my life, that would allow your light to shine through me? Because it might be your light that you're trying to project in a season where God is trying to show you his light shining through you. Lamy says, I feel as if I'm stuck in the same life as 5 years ago. Man, isn't that so true? When life hasn't changed for us in a long time, we feel like we're waking up to the same show. What is it, Groundhog's Day? We're waking up to the same day over and over again. I would just say that something for you to consider as you're beginning to feel that life isn't changing is to really begin to ask yourself, how am I changing? How am I actively engaging with change? What are the areas of my life where I know I have room for growth, and what do I do each day that gets me one step closer to that? Because you can have the same job, same family, same city, same car for 5 years and be a completely different person. Because what I did on the inside during that time, I learned to become more patient. I learned to become more creative. I learned to be more compassionate. I learned fitness. Like, I got into fitness. I started doing this. I started doing that. Don't allow a failure of your circumstances to change to make you believe that you haven't changed. If you have been alive for 5 years, something in you has changed, but you may have to do some investigating to figure out what that is. Listen, I feel like I get a lot of questions from people that are like, should I stay? Should I go? Should I build? Should I not? Should I write? Should I sit down? Should I cook? Should I give up? Should I move to another city? And I feel like most of the questions that I get, whether people believe it or not, have a lot to do with ultimately identity. It comes down to us really needing to ask ourselves, like, who am I? What do I want? What does God want from me? Do those things align, and how do I activate it? And so in June, I went on tour. I went on the Woman Evolve tour, and it was called the Revolution Tour. And man, at first I was really stressed. My kids caught COVID. We were leaving them in different cities so that we could go to the next city. I felt so tired, so drained, so empty. By the time we got to the end of tour, I was at a space where I was so confident about the message that we were sharing with women. And yet I had women who were like, what do I do from this? I feel inspired. I feel this motivation. Y'all feel me? You hear a message, you hear a podcast that 40 minutes radically changes your perspective. And then what? You got to figure out, like, how do I keep my mind stretched out? How do I keep this growth in mind? And so I've been thinking actively about ways that we can just give women practical tools, women in particular. How do we give them practical tools to really help them begin to harness the inspiration they feel to change their lives, the momentum they feel to change their lives, and to channel it into a practical tool